Alright, the markets today has the yen pairs lower than they should be. They should be doing a slight retrace, starting with the dollar, the euro, the pound, and the Swiss. And the dollar yen at the bottom is showing buy direction based off of the performance and interest. And looking at financials, that's what I'm saying. It's financials that's going to probably have the gains. You can see JP Morgan, Visa, and Verizon, American Express, Goldman Sachs. The companies that are buying in that direction, the tech sectors are slightly lower. The military sector is slightly lower, dealing with flights using Boeings. So the sectors, it's going to show financials on gain. Probably the highest out of all of them. Yep. And then the materials, it's the transportation and logistics. The energy sector is dealing with the performance of the current established companies. So it's like companies already got their energy sector together, whether it's dealing with the commodities they use or the amount they spend. That's covered on the positive because the financials is moving ahead of the energy sector. So then that sustains health because it allows more accessible. They could call it I ain't say PPE because that's like protective, but it allows them to have, or allows people to have more sufficient resources based off their energy consumption. Then that goes into consumer staples. That's consumption right there. That's the food, stuffs, and so forth. And then it's industrialized, similar to the Industrial Revolution, the consumer discretionary vehicles. It's distributed, not to say it's the lower end of transportation, but in that direction, that's where it goes. And then the utilities is just similarities to say, well, the cost of utilities went down because there's less consumption. As you see, consumption utilities down. It could be because there's less consumption. So it's around lunchtime right now. So those two probably start to range back and forth in those areas. But the food consumption is buying up because, of course, it's around 12 p.m. Eastern. So other than that, the real estate cost is getting lower because a lot of places that have more financials, even the wealthiest people, noticing that the real estate was inflated and they was paying more anyway. So now they ain't got no choice but to lower or keep the rates low, if not lower the inflation costs of the real estates. And locally, in my area, they got people that's fixing roofs. So that's to basically show, hey, they still were going to add on. That's an added accessory, added on. But in actuality, people still owned it before they added it on. So there's depreciation in that form before it was even attributed. So then it go right out to tech. The tech, the rate at 1922. Look at that right there. So it shows that that's just an addition. So as you can see, the job amount at UPS, that was cut back like 12,000 jobs. So that's around 2% of the employment in that building, in that quarter. So if it's each quarter's, that's like 4 of them. So basically 4 times 12,000 is 48,000. That's the peak layoff of, I would say, about 8% and of the employment amount that's there. So that's an overview of the financials and how the money's moving through the logistics. And as you see, that was one of the number 1 stories, number 2 story. So as far as the charts go, it's been a range on the pound yen for most of the day. Dollar yen is the same way, even though they're supposed to have a buy direction during the timeline of the duration of 2024. And as far as the stock market individually, see the financials are gaining finally. The tech sector, NASDAQ in the middle, it's finally got the sales like it was supposed to, but the overall profit in the tech sector on that end So it'd be Tesla, the market movers, and NVIDIA, and it's another company on there that had a gain. But it's all right. So it's just mostly tech sector companies, micro device companies. You look at the top gainers by $1, then move it to the volume. You can see in the video right there, see at the top left, and then the company that's supporting it with a form of nanotechnology, nanoparticle construction, using tech in the medical reference. Another one, super micro computer, tech sector. And that's out of the NASDAQ. So NASDAQ is related more to the tech sector. So I'll go to New York Stock Exchange. The same thing there. It's probably in healthcare. We already looked at that. Yep, healthcare, dealing with research and nanoparticle surgery and so forth. That's probably what they're looking more into. And that side of the investment. So as far as the indices, the Russell 2000 is slightly down, even the financials up, but it's not down as much as the Dow Jones Transportation, meaning the Dow Jones Transportation have any affiliation with companies like UPS that had a quarterly layoff, then those funds were going down anyway, and the Russell 2000 went down because the unsustainable jobs that were there from the layoffs reduced the investor capability. Then the interest wasn't gained more off the Treasury because there wasn't that many investors to put back into a Federal Deposit Insurance affiliate or FDIC affiliate. So the first thing they'll try to raise as a government would be renewable energies, and that's out of the utilities. So if you look at the interest rate on the utilities to the far right, you'll see that's the nearest one to come out of this zero, negative 0.26, and they'll probably get to buy faster. So with that being said, if they're lowering the cost enough to afford it for themselves and already had the Dow near the financials already on gain, and the tech sector doesn't know about it, and this is small business to the far right, S&P 500 at the top right of the screen, that's slightly gaining. Those are businesses out there that actually can look at it in that aspect. So with the Dow Jones already ahead of the market, then the financials are showing that the utilities are going to be one of the instances that people are going to have to spend more on because they're not doing a lot of shipment at this time or purchasing back and forth. Let's see, it's about to be the first of the month, so everybody about to get their check. So of course the sufficieness of where they're staying will have to be sustained for them to be able to reside there to buy any foods. So basically the utilities is established based off of the welfare that people have, I would say, I guess. More or less like somebody's on welfare and they got utility bills. Well, sometimes apartments, they cover the utilities for them. So that's not an expense out of the resident's pocket. Section 8 and so forth. So when that happens, then the price of food might get inflated, but it's more affordable because the first of the month there's SNAP stamps, food stamps, welfare support, and so forth. So after the utilities, then they'll go to the Treasury, and that's a government entity because they would have it deposited there in a form of commerce. So when it's deposited in commerce and it's evaluated in the society, that's economics, then the commissioner overviews the economic report, then makes an economic statement, and that's similar to the unemployment numbers that relate to welfare. So then after where it says 10-year Treasury note, then by the time it goes from 10-year Treasury note, it goes to an investment platform, and that's usually like the Russell 2000, or it goes to a transportation industry, logistic industry, I should say. So the Russell 2000 be the first source of income. What is that average person's pay once they get a job out of welfare, out of Section 8, after the utilities covered, so they can sustain the food stamps to get a job anyway. So then by the time they get a job, It's like, all right, they got a job. What's 2,000? Where's that at? Okay, they call those similarities to 401ks. What's 401k similar to sound like? Number 4, D, 0, O, 1, A. D, O, A, or D, 0, A. Not to say it's dead or alive. But by the time it's a K there, that K usually represents 1,000. So that amount could be a reference to what the Rothschilds family have been using. As they call it a Roth IRA. But that if you ain't thinking about it, if it's a Rothschild family that's trying to help support on a scale that's a micro scale to the individual, so they can manage it on a grand scale without pushing keys on a piano scale to harmonize the deception that people call illumination or music that's told to be the prince of air, or Satan's tool. So in our actuality, by the time it goes in the Roth IRA office of Russell 2000 format, that's an assist to help people sustain based off the interest gained off of society without convicting the families of conspiracy to control society, when out of welfare has to be controlled based off the local authoritative nature of the being itself. So then it goes out of us 2000, and that's funny. But anyway, I get in that basketball, football, sports. They got Russell on there, so that's the games people play. So they try to put people in games to make them play against each other since 2000. So it could be war games, X Games, daggone Hunger Games, daggone what else? All types of games. So anyway, let's see. Okay, so now the next one would be, if you go up the list, like the way the list looks is like saying Dow Jones Utilities. Okay, that's showing $853, some 68 cents, whatever. So then the Russ 2000 showing 1,999.60. So what happens is, now that that's put out of the system, that's almost like saying, well, it's out of the system. Guess what? That's not in a welfare recipient, because they're making more than $2,000 in a month. Okay, so it's kind of simple. So when you think about it, then you go up to the next one. So you're looking at those. There's other indices that was deleted off of E-Trade. It used to be like the SP 100, the AMEX, and it was on those one on that list right there. Now, as far as the rest of them, some of them still up top on the move up here. So you can see the SP 500 will be slightly above the Russell 2000 at around $4,000 or $5,000 basically. So then after somebody's out of that 2,000 a month, they already qualified for a small business, because they're not in a welfare state. They're in a fair state. So it's like saying there's well, then there's fair, and then there's wealthy. So the fair became healthy, right? Because health is wealth. So if it's fair, then it turns from welfare to wealthy, and then from fair to healthy. So basically, S&P 500 shows how at that instance, with that amount of income saved, is not necessarily has to be made per month, because that amount of money could be saved, and in that similarity of a month, there's no measure on salvation. So it's still saved. So regardless, it's always accredited regardless of the circumstance. But then what happens is, if they want to go back to the Rothness, or how somebody's wroth with one another, they have to remember they're God's child. So regardless of being wroth, it's to be able to acknowledge God, to be forgiven for those feelings. So then the S&P 500, right? So what wound up happening is, at the top right of the screen, so that's like saying, okay, so businesses are put into perspective. So guess what? That Social Security number, if it's related to those federal banks or reserves or Illuminati or whatever, if somebody has an EINC or whatever, EINC or whatever it's called, they can call it a taxpayer number too, but an EINC or whatever, basically they had those. That's similar to like a business. So they're taking themselves out of the lawfulness, or out of the Dead or Alive, or out of the Hunger Games, or out of the all those games, Squid Games, whatever. They're taking themselves out of all of that stuff and then putting themselves into a business state of mind. Not the reference in the form of any kind of copyright or trademark infringement, but if a rapper whose alias is a J and last name Z saying not a business but a business, so using the empire state, so using the minds of the masses, created a state of what they would call euphoria without the addiction, so it can alleviate the person that's convicted. So if I put it in the form of showing y'all how that's saying that person was convicted, they just didn't know how to admit it, and they spoke in reference to it. It's only alleviating that portion of it. And that's what confessionals have in booths on a religious standpoint. So there's businesses for all of those types of situations. So what winds up happening is, after, that's just why it takes a while to explain it, because S&P 500, standard and poor is what it means. So if you think about it, what's a standard? Well, that's beyond the welfare. What's a standard after welfare? It's like having a well-setting or well-being, so and so forth. What I was saying earlier, other than being on welfare out of Section 8, then being in commerce, or being beyond the standard. And then the poor might have to be after that, and that's near to us 2,000, where they're under $2,000 a month or something like that. And then they're after the standard, which is to at least save around 4,000. Because if it's 2,000 and let's say SP 500 5,000, so if that secures a business, that means once they get to that $5,000 mark, that's like saying, well, now they're no longer in welfare. They just have to get a sustainable business form, or to have in memory or acknowledgement that God is a sustainer, and there's all types of opportunities with a faith of a mustard seed there. So basically it could be seeds, it could be anything that they're doing in their life that classifies their life as not a hobby but as a business, and to extract it from the Rothschilds or the Illuminati from their Roth, that says Roth 401k. It said on people 401k, you can ask somebody who got one. And then if it could mean something different too. So I'm not saying that's exactly what it means, but anyway, if it's extracted and it goes to the next level, that's like the S&P 500. So then that's the 500 that could be putting, orchestrating societies based off of zoning authorities. And remember, I was saying authorities, welfare projects, something that's built for a society, just like community projects, local register areas, just basic stuff. There's other names they call projects. I can't remember. But basically, how people get put in projects, they call them on welfare, hoods, or whatever. That's all in zoning authority. And then that's why people get businesses. If you go and try to get a business, they're going to make you get in. Some people probably don't even do it right, but if they get in a zone. And it's the zoning, they got to get a zoning license too. But some people don't get zoning license. They just get businesses, and then they operate at their residency, and then their residency gets zoned in. So then they start trying to get like the businesses that only have the 5,000. They try to get plugs to plug in the zone. So basically, that's like saying auto. Like an auto is like how a plug is moving. So let's say they're in the zone and they plugging into the zone, then they putting parts in the zone. But if they putting parts that just gets everybody around in the zone like a vehicle, then it ain't a plug. So basically, when a business has to get an affiliate, it's similar to a plug. So what happens is, it's like saying if it's a business that's doing the S&P 500 or something like that, and then they get caught up into something that was non-affiliated, but is not affiliated with their business, but it still can have an effect on the business, then that could cause the business to have to rely on using credit that's there for assistance. So basically, after the Russ 2000, like I was saying, then it goes SP 500. Then those businesses have credit businesses and so forth that issue credit off of societies. It could be really off that person individually, because like I was saying earlier, if there's funds on our social security numbers and all that stuff, and they're saying people are corporations and businesses, then that's a replication of a business format in a very brief statement, because my memory's low on my phone. So anyway, I'm gonna just hurry up and say some more things. I can say other things later. I'm gonna go to the other few at the top of the list. The NASDAQ is slightly higher than the Dow Jones Transportation. That's on there. And basically, the NASDAQ is a tech sector. The tech sector, let's say it's after the business. So that means like if a business has any kind of technology advantage, would it be 3 times as more valuable as a business? Because SP 500, let's say it's 5,000. Let's say 5,000 or whatever. And let's say it's 3.3 times more valuable. So then 5 times, 3 times 5,000 is 15,000. So 3.3, basically like 16,500 or something like that. So I could do that real quick. So 5,000 times 3.3, yeah, 16,500. All right. So now, if you think about what a plug is mentioning, is the NASDAQ is a tech sector. So if techs support each other by software stability, or some kind of functionality that links energy, I would say, or data through similarity filaments or carbon or any kind of tech sector, any sector that's dealing with any kind of commodity. It doesn't have to necessarily be carbon data or wireless communications or nano. If it's a tech sector that's dealing with that, and it's a business that's operating with tech, then that's an affiliate. That's how people can have it to where they can sell certain items out of their business that's not manufactured by them. So with that, that's why I said that $5,000 can automatically qualify individuals to put them in those positions to where they could be authorized sellers of those instances. So basically, it takes it out of the Rothschild's hands. Meaning, if the Rothschild or somebody who is Roth, they had something in their hand that was a large business, and they were like, hey, that business been going on for 100 years. I remember 100 years ago, certain individuals couldn't even purchase parts of that business. Some of the individuals that's here didn't even have domesticated visas to use to get those type of entities or beings or whatever. Not beings, but items. So basically, by the time all that happened, it's sort of like saying, okay, now the NASDAQ and the tech sector are moving in that fashion, but the businesses are behind those tech sectors. So if somebody had a business similar to way back in the day, Barack Obama was saying most people should get businesses. All they gotta do is get businesses and start businesses and run businesses. And that is true. But at the end of the day, by the time it goes through the format of the business, those people that, not those people, but any person that's outside of a business looking in, they want to get a speculatory gain. Some type of, whether it's acknowledgement or some type of energy put back into that effort to get them forms of recognition. So basically, since we recognize it as God and the works of the midst, whatever we working on ain't even business. Ain't no standing on business or nothing. We ain't in business with God. What you talk about? At the end of the day, God is our Father. So how was like you said, Dad, I'm here to, now we could work like a business, but being in business with your dad is not doing business with your dad. So it's like two different ways of just saying, like, definition to it, I should say, definitely to know that we don't have to orchestrate a tech sector business to say it's replacing what God's business is. God gives us tools. They work into what's going on. It's still a part of the small, standard, and poor. Rich, free, poor, no bond. And they ain't escaping it. You step above the business, then it can't get to you. It'll get to the business. Now, since we're not in business, we're in the world but not of the world, and the world is mostly of business, and being in the world, since we're in the body of Christ, our body don't got to worry about business. So the business of the system or the beast can't 666 people. So the thing about it is, now the NASDAQ is the opposite, because the NASDAQ is almost like a tech sector, crazy, everything, technology, nanobots in the body, you know, computer chips in people, all types of stuff, fake limbs to make artificial intelligence work with the brain, and then the neural connections of how, you know, the daggone, I can't really think of how I word it. It's a lot to say. All I can say is, it could be said, there's nothing wrong with it. It could be patiently said. But like I said, I don't got that much extra time to talk about it. So getting to the tech sector, I already mentioned how it could reflect in destroying what the works of God has for us. But at the same time, God allows us to continue business. So by the time it goes past the NASDAQ, then it goes back to the Dow Jones Transportation, and things move at certain rates. Now, this is the funny part, because the third one is the Dow Jones Transportation. Like, if you look at it, it says Dow Jones on the top left, right? That's at 38,387.9 cents or whatever. And then you look down, and it's showing the Dow Jones is the next one. I mean, Dow Jones Transportation, but it's actually the New York Stock Exchange, and that's the only other one. Oh no, I'm trying to see if I can find it real quick, for my memory fell up, and then gonna let me record the rest of it. Okay, so NYSE. Oh, NYA, there you go. So see, 17,068.62. All right, so daggone, okay, hold up. All right, so it'll be the Dow Jones, then the New York Stock Exchange, then the Dow Jones Transportation. But what's so weird about that, off of the three currencies, the first one will show the pound, then the euro, then the Swiss, and then the dollar. So the Swiss will be related to the Dow Jones Transportation. So when you think about something being transported, moved in a certain direction using the tech sector, that's similar to Switzerland, the Large Hadron Colliders in Switzerland. I remember back in the day they were saying they was put it in Canada, but Canada would have been near the S&P 500, the businesses in that area. So if those businesses were there, those atoms would have been smashing together over in Canada, and it might have been able to open up the warmer temperatures in Canada to help fight off the cold weather. But if it didn't, then it would have just been something totally different. So all I was gonna say about that wasn't really that important. I just wanted to say that it was unique that the Dow Jones Transportation is in the third category, right near Switzerland on the currency pair, and at the fastest rate of research, the quantum physicists using atoms to smash them together to replicate the Big Bang Theory and to gather dark matter and so forth at the speed of light. So that's just like a peek off of the Dow Jones Transportation and off of Switzerland, and the third company performing with the markets at Apple. So basically, by the time it goes to the next direction after the Dow Jones Transportation and what's being transported, beings, individuals that are free light are being transported. But like I said, the tech sector is totally backwards from the society. So basically, it's like saying, well, those atoms are being smashed together on scientifically, and then physically or spiritually, we're light traveling, passing by each other, or if not literally smashing into each other. But we don't see the light that's smashing by each other. Mainly our shadow, put it this way, our shadow, even though the light points at one place and it gives a shadow off one other, but the light is still everywhere. So at that point, so basically the shadow is just a reflection of where our light would literally be crossing paths with one another. So it's not to say that just because somebody's shadow is near them, they literally crossing paths, but it looked like it, you know what I mean? So then, by the Dow Jones Transportation, the light being inside of us all and it's being transported, it actually keeps people out of the dark. So like I was saying earlier with the utilities, people get on welfare, they get put in the dark. That's because their light was almost dwindling. So basically, it had to be put back into not a raw state of child, because they weren't rawfully dwindling. Meaning like when Cain killed Abel, he went away and wrathfully dwindled in like a cave with no light. And then he had to be brought back out as a child to realize, hey, guess what? Before something happened to his brother, he was a child. And he wrathfully went on as a child. And then he got governed, or not really governed, but I would say the next one would be business. And then that's more of like the Canaanites, you know. And then that's like saying the 500 or the 300, S&P 500, Standards and Poor. So he would have been at the standard of his family for what he wound up doing, what the works of God wound up allowing to happen, put it that way. And then the poor family who sat in dwelling dwell in the dim, they wound up getting on welfare. They started being outcasts, just like it would have happened to him when they couldn't kill him, but they was outcasting him. So then that's where it go back to the utilities, and the water leaves the eye, so forth. Then it gets governed and so forth. And then it goes back to the child. Is it a Rothschild, or is it a wrathfulness, or is it a childlessness? And then it's an instance of both once it gets beyond the sustainability in that society, because we're either with God or against God. So we're not going to stay wrath in any way, but we'll always be his child. So basically what winds up happening is it moves out that category, puts everybody up where God is, or Jesus beside the right hand on the throne and so forth. And then it goes to a treasury. So then the treasury puts people back in the governing state, and it's a state of mind. So it's a government, or it's a mind state, a ment, like M-E-N-T, and think about the last two words in your mind, mental. You know what I'm saying? So it's a mental, but it's a governmental. So it's a governmental society. So then by the time it comes out of that, they get Social Security for the socialness of the mental. So to make somebody sociably mental, so they won't be babbling like the Tower of Babel and get destroyed and separated amongst nations and spread in diverse places and all that stuff. It basically gets put into a perspective of now they're not babbling. Are they speaking for God? You know, and then God works through the mist, whether it's the old or the new. And then by the time people realize that they're speaking for God, God will show them their talent. So their talent basically comes through the tech. So that's like saying that's better than tech. I'd rather have talent than tech, because tech is devices made by man, by many, to develop something to advance mankind, when God already made us advanced enough to have talent for mankind to be technical. So technical is nothing but a mere technicality. So somebody would say, excuse me, man, my good sir or ma'am, that is a mere technicality. That's not a talent. That means that they extracted the talent of God's works to make their own technical acknowledgement, when God's talent is diverse and it's in an array of places. It's not just with that constitution, with that word. There's justification beyond what can be defined by man. So in our actuality, that's where justice comes from, and liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because we all got free will. So on that note, free will just became freedom. See what I'm saying? And then they want to say people dumb because they got a governmental social standing. They govern the mind and say, hey, that academically performance wasn't accredited by establishment based with the criteria that equals out to be a formulated process through duration of time based off of a speculative congressional establishment that showed proof and dedication to the timeline of how long it took for me to say that I ain't had to say that that's what they might say. So that's just a formulated theory. That's it's not a technical way of speaking. That's like expressing a talent that was defined by other technicalities, meaning it took somebody's talent or whatever they thought they was doing right and said it was wrong, so they could be talented enough to gain from the technicality. Now, a gainer and a loser, what shall a man gain if he gain the world? and lose a soul. I should leave like that.